everyone. Today we are going to look at the next formula for trigonometry called the cosine law. So just like the sine law, we first want to look at why we can use it and where it is useful. So let's consider looking at this triangle right here. Again, can we use Pythagorean's theorem? No, it's not a right angle triangle. Can we use our primary trig ratios, SOHCAHTOA? No, because it's not a right angle triangle. What about the sine law? Well, the sine law says that I need two sides and an angle across from the sides. Well, this angle is not across from either side, okay? So there's no way that I could make up a set of opposite ratios here. And then the other scenario for your sine law would be to have two angles and a side, and I don't have that either. So the sine law doesn't actually fit in order to solve this triangle. So we need to come up, so long story short, no, okay, we can't use it. We have to find another way to solve it. So we're going to introduce you to something called the cosine law. Now, the cosine law can be written in two ways, but I want to look at this form first. What you should notice is that this first part is really similar to something you've seen before. It's basically Pythagorean's theorem, but with this extra piece at the end. So this would be for any triangle ABC, which is where any triangle ABC, and here is if I'm finding a side, but then I would need to know two other sides and the angle that is across from the side you're looking for, okay? And it just so happens that this angle ends up always being in between these two sides, okay? I'll summarize this in a few minutes. So you should notice that the first part is Pythagorean's theorem, and that you need to realize anytime you're using your cosine law, the big angle is going to be across from the side that you are looking for in your triangle. Okay, and you'll see a diagram after. Okay, now we can do some, I'll call it magic algebra. We can do some algebra and we can take that equation and rearrange it. I've written it one way here. You're going to see another way in a minute. But we can rearrange that formula and we can get this form or this version of your cosine law. And this one, you'll notice that the angle C is by itself this time. So once we rearrange it to get this type of formula, this one will allow you to find sides. Now, in this equation, you'll notice that we've been given 1, 2, 3 sides. So if you know all three sides of your triangle, you can use the cosine law to find one of the angles. Just make sure that the angle you're looking for, this guy, is across from this side in your triangle, okay? All right, so let's look at the two of them together, okay? So given any triangle ABC, your cosine law states that if you have been given two sides and the contained angle, two sides and the angle in between, or three sides, you can use the cosine law. Keeping in mind that if this is your formula, you will notice that angle C in your triangle or your diagram is always across from side C, okay? So make sure that when you're plugging them in, these are in the right position, your C values, okay? All right, let's get into some actual questions. So let's determine the length of side C to the nearest 1/10 of a centimeter, so to 1 decimal. If this is angle C, this would be side C. So we have our side A is 7 centimeters, side B is 5 centimeters, and side C, we're not sure, but we do know that angle C is 43. I have two sides in the contained angle, so I can use the cosine law. Okay? So we're going to start setting it up. This is our cosine law if we're finding sides. I'm going to take the 7 and the 5 and plug them in. And if you happen to plug those two in backwards, that's fine. Those ones, just like regular Pythagorean's theorem, won't make a difference. The 43 is the angle. That's the one that gets plugged in here. Okay. So substitute your values in, and then you can simplify every part of your formula. So 7 squared is 49. 5 squared is 25, and you can do this part all in one step, and you should get 51.194, and again, I rounded to 8. Please include this step. I would like to see 3 separate numbers. And I'm doing this to make sure that you don't make any mistakes when you're plugging in your numbers into your calculators. A lot of times when students try to do this in one step, they end up with the incorrect answer because some calculators have more BEDMAS rules programmed into them than others. So please show me 1, 2, 3 terms. Then you can add them up. So this plus this minus this, I got 22.8. And now I need to get C by itself. I have to get rid of the square sign. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Just like Pythagorean's theorem, I'm going to take the square root of 22.8. You should get approximately 5. Okay, and that is pretty much using your cosine law for finding sides. Okay. The other scenario that you can use the cosine law for is when you're finding angles, and I like this one because it's easy to identify. And then once you have the formula, it's actually not too bad. But I like identifying it because it's the only time you're going to have all 3 sides. If you have all 3 sides, use the cosine law. Now, I'm not going to find all the interior angles. We are just going to solve for angle R. Okay, so I want to solve this guy. There is our cosine law. This is the one I would like you to do. Now, I know I had one with the inverse cos on the other side. Start with this one, and we'll take the inverse cos on our very last step. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to solve for R. I have to identify the side across from it. And in this case, it's 3.2. So this is the number, if this is in our formula, angle C, this is the number that's going to go in for little side C. That's this guy. That's the one that gets subtracted. They are across from each other in the triangle. They would have been across from each other in the formula, but we rearranged the formula. So these are the 2 matching C values. Okay, so substitute your values in. That's our first step. So my A, we can plug in 6.2. My B, I'm going to plug in 5.9. And the only one that really matters is 3.2 that goes in for C. Again, A is 6.2 and B is 5.9. Once you've got these here, we're just going to follow BEDMAS rules and simplify what we can. Okay, so let's go up so you can see a little better. When you plug these into your calculator, you should get about 63. The denominator, I got around 73. Continue to simplify this left-hand side, and we should be here. Now, this line should start to look familiar. You have to figure out what your C value is, what your angle is. Well, get cos onto the other side. The opposite of cos would be the inverse cos. So take the inverse cos of 0.8613. That will give you the angle answer of 30.5. Okay, they rounded to get rid of the decimals, so you're looking at an angle of about 31 degrees. Okay, that's pretty much it for the cosine law. You're finding sides or finding angles. Make sure your calculator is in degrees, and we'll see you next time.